Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come, and you shall know peace and joy. These words are from Israel Zangwill. Good morning. I am your new Director of Religious Exploration, Cory, and I welcome you to this virtual worship service of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. Because we cannot meet in the church building, there have been program changes, including new programs to strengthen and serve members and friends of the church during this time of physical distancing. Every Sunday there is a live virtual coffee hour following the service from 11:30 a.m. until 1 p.m. Please read news you can use and the other emails you receive from the church. And please check the website regularly for updates. Please note the times when the minister is available via Zoom for you to check in and talk. Please send your joy or sorrow via the link in the email that you received and indicate whether you give permission for it to be read at next week's service. If you are a visitor or newcomer, I invite you to explore the website at uchbg.org to learn about the church and our many activities. To all watching and listening, I say, whoever you are, wherever you are, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. I invite those of you at home to light a chalice, a candle, or whatever you choose to serve as your chalice at home. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice.
Please join in the reading of our unison words of affirmation.
Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another.
Please join in singing our opening hymn, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the
excited to be part of today's service as your lay liturgist. For those of you who don't know me, I am Amy Firestein, member of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. For today's service, I am taking part in the Time for All Ages to pass the RE baton to our new DRE, Cory Ness. Cory has invited families to join her in Zoom meetings in an effort for her to get to know you and you to get to know her better. I invite you to keep an eye out for the News You Can Use invites that give you the time and dates of her next events. One of the things that Cory asks those who will be joining her in those meetings is for you to fill a bag with 5 items that represent you. Cory asked me to fill a bag with 5 items that represent me, and I thought, what a wonderful idea. Many of you know who I am, but how many of you know anything about me personally? So I have my bag of 5 items. The first thing to know about me is I am a mom. I have a 16-year-old son, and this is him, Thomas. Another thing to know about me is my favorite animal is the raccoon. My favorite movie of all times is The Wizard of Oz. And a little tidbit about that, my favorite character in The Wizard of Oz, the Scarecrow. Another thing about me is I love Broadway. And I am very, very sad that Broadway is still dark. But I understand the reasons why, and I wish that we can get back to seeing shows again live on Broadway soon. And the number 5 thing about me is I love Disney, but my favorite Disney character is Winnie the Pooh. So, those are 5 things that you now know about me. I now pass the sharing to Cory, who is going to share 5 things from her bag with you.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing your 5 things. Now, I wonder, what might I have in my bag? All right. So, I have a flaming chalice, a gift from my previous congregation. I have pictures of my kids when they were little, and now as adults. And I have plenty of books. I love to read. I love to read all kinds of things. If somebody asked me to pick out one favorite book, it would be extremely difficult. And then my husband and I, we like to go camping. I could not put that in the bag, but this is our camper. And lastly, I love to collect fabric. I love to collect fabric so I can create things. And I have created well over 100 things. Probably a lot more than that, actually. And this is one that I created. This is a small art project. And at the top, that you can't see, it says, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but bends towards justice." There's one. And then I created this for Pi Day. And this is a piece where I was experimenting with different types of paints on top of fabric. And then this one is based off the song Quiet, or I Can't Keep Quiet. That was quite popular about 3 years ago. That song really stuck with me, and I just felt like I had to create something. And then I also create much larger quilts, such as this one. You can't see the whole quilt, but you can see parts of it. And then I have another quilt that I also made. And let's hold it up this way for you. And then I have a lot of UFOs. I wonder if you all know what a UFO is. A UFO is an unfinished object, and I have quite a few of those projects downstairs. So that's what I have in my bag. I wonder, what is in your bag?
It's a very ancient saying, but a true and honest thought, that if you become a teacher, by your pupils you'll be taught. As a teacher I've been learning, you'll forgive me if I boast, and I've now become an expert on the subject I like most. Getting to know you. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me, getting to know you, putting it my way but nicely. You're precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I'm with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy, because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I'm with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy, because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day.
I Want to Be with People by Dana E. Worsnop. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they are getting at, and I know that they aren't getting it quite right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved, to be eligible for salvation. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see me in my goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and foibles, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and who will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in the world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and kind, who strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises I make. I want to be with people who give of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and gifts. I want to be with people who know that human community is often warm and generous, sometimes challenging, and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people like you.
Today, in this congregation, someone is hurting or in sorrow. Today, in this congregation, someone is anxious because of events in the world. Today, in this congregation, someone is lonely. Today, in this congregation, someone is filled with joy and wants to celebrate. For all the fear and sorrow in the world today, there are still moments of joy. We have heard the words of the people who have placed their joy and sorrow before this community and before the holy. The words they have shared are words of love and trust. Love for those whose names have been spoken, and love for those who hear. Trust in the acceptance of this community, and trust in the continuity of life. When there is birth, life goes on. When there is death, life goes on. When there is joy, life goes on. When there is sorrow, life goes on. May we always live in trust and in love, that all joy might be shared and all sorrow comforted. This is our prayer. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.
Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme
Father
Some of you may be familiar with the song, Getting to Know You, a show tune from the 1951 Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, The King and I. It was first sung by Gertrude Lawrence in the original Broadway production and later by Mamie Nixon, who dubbed for Deborah Kerr in the 1956 film adaptation. In the show, Anna, a British schoolteacher who has been hired as a governess, sings the song as she strikes up a warm and affectionate relationship with the children and the wives of the King of Siam. It's a lovely and cheerful song with lyrics that represent my desire to get to know you in the midst of COVID-19. This is unfamiliar territory for anyone beginning new employment in a time of physical distancing. When I accepted the position as your Director of Religious Exploration, coronavirus was just beginning to hit the States. Nowhere in my mind did I ever imagine I would begin a new position without meeting people in person. I have to admit, it's one of my biggest anxieties. However, I am deeply committed in finding new ways to make this happen, or, in relation to your summer theme, building a new way. To date, I have met with a minister, some of our church staff, the RE committee, worship committee, members of the board, and some members of our church, all virtually, and occasionally some of their family members. One unexpected facet of meeting virtually is the opportunity to meet our family's fur babies. And this is my fur baby. This is Jake. Hey, Jakey, say hi to everybody. All right. I will now let Jake go get some rest. The only people I have met in person to date are members of the DRE Search Committee and Kel. From the DRE Search Committee, I have heard stories about the many transitions that have occurred in these recent years. And I am aware that you are beginning a search process for a new minister. You have been getting to know many people during these changing times, and so the process continues in getting to know another person again. But as much as this may be weary for some, isn't it also exciting to discover new ways of being, new ways of understanding, and opening our hearts to change? Again, building a new way. Now, I am aware that building a new way came out of the compelling programming from the 2014 General Assembly, where our youth were the ones that led the way. Youth and young adults were pointing the way to the future of Unitarian Universalism and continue to do so. We were called to ask, what are our stories of engaged religious community? What are our efforts to build an inclusive community that supports justice and seeks compassionately? How are we reaching out beyond our immediate Unitarian Universalist community to share the liberal religious values that transform lives? How are we providing deep faith formation for both newcomers and longtime members? How are we building a new way? All of these questions still relevant 6 years later, perhaps even more so. As we begin a new way, let me share with you why I applied for this position as your DRE at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg, and why I am excited to be here. When I heard about this job opening at UCH, I applied. I was interviewed and then received the invitation to serve. As I was working, my husband at the time, as I was working in Virginia, was still employed in Pennsylvania, working out of Berwick and Bruner Island for Talon Energy. During the week, he lived in our motorhome, and I would see him on weekends. life works in mysterious ways, because as all of this was happening, my husband's boss, who also lived in Virginia, in Norfolk, even further away than we were, also had a house in East York that he was selling since he had made the decision to retire. The house is a project house. It is our third house for us to renovate, as it seems that this is now our hobby, fixing things up and leaving them in a better place than they were before. So, now you know I have a spouse of 36 years and our fur baby, Jake. And as you've seen in the Time for All Ages, we also have 2 adult daughters, both Penn State alumni. Our youngest is an English as a second language teacher in Northern Virginia, and our oldest holds a PhD in industrial organizational psychology and works for the government. Many of you may not be aware that the average amount of time a religious educator serves a church is about 3 years. I am now in my 14th year as a credentialed UU religious educator. I am originally from the UU congregation of York, where I served for a little more than 7 years. I remember my colleague, your wonderfully talented and respected DRE, Trish Brandon. Trish and I met with our other colleagues in the Central East region area about every month or so to connect and support one another in this work that we do. So I am somewhat familiar with some of you here as well as your stories. I then moved on to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley, where I also served for 7 years. During my time there, I worked with 6 different ministers, 2 different administrators, and 2 different music directors. The UUCSV church also dealt with a disruptive congregant. Upon the hiring of a full-time minister, and at her discretion after she had some settling in time, I was awarded what was considered a much-deserved sabbatical, where I took time to nourish my soul by attending a 3-part retreat series designed for those who wish to cultivate a more authentic, meaningful, and connected life called the Journey Towards Inner and Outer Wholeness. And this took place in Poplarville, Mississippi. This program is based on the Circle of Trust approach as developed by Parker Palmer that some of you may remember or know. These retreats provide a safe space away from distractions and demands of everyday life to hear the wisdom of the heart. During this particular year, I was also involved in a year-long study called UU Wellspring for professional religious educators. UU Wellspring is a year-long Unitarian Universalist program of spiritual deepening and connection. The program helped deepen our spiritual lives and connections to one another through an intentional program of daily spiritual practice, spiritual direction, study and reflection, and online small group meetings. So I come to you happily with a spirit and soul refreshed and ready to serve. Despite the challenges at my previous congregation, it was difficult to leave the UUCSV, as I have developed deep and meaningful relationships with the ministers, staff, and congregants. I left the church feeling admiration for their love of our faith and each other, as well as their resilience through difficult times. During my first year at the Shenandoah Valley, I intentionally took the time to get to know the congregants. I listened to their stories, concerns, and their hopes for their future, in their own lives and for the church. It is my intention to do the same with you. I believe my experiences in the Shenandoah Valley uniquely parallels your journey, so I will be able to relate well to your challenges as well as your dreams for the future. Now, I love stories, and I'm sure some of you here are wonderful storytellers, just like our very own Amy Firestein. Stories help us explain everything in our experience, from science to relationships, from feelings to memories, and from questions to concerns. And with every story that we hear, read, or listen, our mind makes cognitive and emotional connections that shape our perspective of the world. Dale Carnegie, author of the classic business book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, said, "When dealing with people, let us remember we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion." Relationships, whether they are personal or professional, are based on emotional connections and built on trust. Sharing stories can have a significant impact on building relationships as they have the ability to promote trust. And while we may intuitively know that this makes sense, there is science to prove that this is true. Our brain has different parts, and each part has a different job. The left side of our brain, for example, helps us think logically and organizes our thought, while the right side helps us experience emotion and recall personal memories. We also have a reptile brain that makes us act instinctively, and a mammal brain that helps us to connect in relationships. Our brains also have a neocortex, which is connected to a complex series of nerves and networks called the limbic system. This is responsible for the development of the bond we feel between ourselves and another, like a mother and child bond. When we tell stories, all the different parts and areas of our brain are stimulated and start to work together, combining words and logic and emotions and sensory images, so we see the whole picture and communicate our experience. Essentially, with all this activity going on, our emotions go into overdrive. This means that stories provoke our emotions. Good stories make us feel something as we listen to them: excitement, anger, sadness, empathy, frustration, enthusiasm. Consequently, feeling these emotions means we feel something towards the person telling the story, which helps us to create connection and build relationships. Oxytocin is also often referred to as the trust hormone. Our bodies release it when we are with people that we love and trust, when we hug, or even when we shake hands in a business meeting. And it's released when we listen to stories. Oxytocin being released signals to the brain that everything is okay and safe. In other words, we have a higher level of trust than we did before hearing the story. So not only does a good story make us feel different emotions and a connection to the storyteller, but at the same time, the love emotion or the love hormone, oxytocin, is also indicating that we can be trusted, which is critical to building and maintaining relationships. One of my favorite quotes by our American poet Maya Angelou famously said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." I come to serve you. I am ready to serve with many hopes and dreams for the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. I also want to be in alignment with your hopes and dreams. In order to make this happen, I invite you to share your stories, your hopes and dreams for the UCH and your own personal stories. Some of you have already started reaching out to me, and I appreciate and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I truly want to be a part of your individual and collective community, spiritual journeys in achieving these imaginings. This summer, we have been sharing stories from Dr. Seuss with our children and how these stories relate to our UU principles. The RE Committee and I are reviewing opportunities for our children and youth for the fall in the time of physical distancing. In regards to adult RE, I am reviewing various opportunities for learning, growing, and building connections. At this time, I am considering a discussion group on how to be an anti-racist, a book by Ibram X. Kendi, and am looking for a leader to facilitate. If this is something that you're interested in, I encourage you to contact me. I am also considering leading 2 programs, including a 12-session program on spiritual practices for anybody in the church, and a 6-week session on creating Sabbath space, which aims to help families carve out Sabbath space in their homes and home life in the time of COVID-19. The program includes guidance for building a home altar, family worship. It includes scripts and 2 to 3 after worship activities to help families lean into Sabbath experiences of resting, playing, and connecting more deeply with each other. Now, this project arose from a survey of our Soul Matters Circle members about what new resources were needed in the time of a pandemic and physical distancing. I am also willing to begin a needle arts group for knitters, crocheters, quilters, cross-stitchers, weavers, and more, where we can all gather with our projects to stitch and chat. No agenda, just building connections. If you have an idea for an adult RE program, I encourage you to contact me. I would love to hear from you. Before our time together ends, I have another invitation. We need to thank Amy Firestein for her work these past few months in holding together the RE program. As I have spent time with Amy, I have witnessed her loving care for our children and youth, leaders, and committee members. Amy has been working extra hard these past months to keep our community together and alive since the departure of your previous religious educator and then the unexpected arrival of the coronavirus. Amy has had to learn to work differently than was foreseen, and she did so with grace. So I invite you to a card shower where we flood her mailbox with cards and notes, letting her know how appreciative we are to have her covering these past few months as our DRE. You can find her address in our church directory. Lastly, you might remember the 2 quilts I presented earlier during the Time for All Ages. Well, I will be gifting Amy with one of these quilts as a way to say thank you and for passing on the torch. Many blessings in all you do, Amy, for the work you have achieved here at UCH and for what lies ahead of you. Thank you.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me, getting to know you.
Even as you are separated and sitting in your own homes today, the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is still a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you. The ministry continues even when the building is closed. For July, we are sharing the plate with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The mission of the UUSC is to advance human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with those who confront unjust power structures and mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. The UUSC work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity. There is a link for contributing to today's plate collection in the video description below. You may have to click on the words "Show More" to see it. The same link is in the email that went out to members this morning inviting you to today's service. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please be generous.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
These are words from Brene Brown about owning our own personal story from her book, Rising Strong. One of the truisms of wholehearted living is you either walk into your story and own your truth, or you live outside of your story, hustling for your worthiness. Owning our stories means acknowledging our feelings and wrestling with the hard emotions, our fear, anger, aggression, shame, and blame. This isn't easy, but the alternative, denying our stories and disengaging from emotion, means choosing to live our entire lives in the dark. It means no accountability, no learning, no growth. To harness the force, we must own our stories and live our truth. In we must go.
Please join in singing our closing hymn, Building a New Way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed
will not extinguish the chalice to mark the conclusion of worship. The screen will fade, but keep the chalice burning in your mind's eye. This is a benediction from Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of a shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. We are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be. And we are reborn, forged by a greater courage. Let us move from this place, encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead.
Haven't you noticed? Suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day.